Okay, so we're live, and I'm gonna read chapter 15. I had missed uploading one, and I did a live one. I'm gonna redo that. I think chapter 11 was the sound was bad. I'll redo that one. 12 uploaded, 13 uploaded. I just did 14. I'm uploading that now. So I'm gonna do 15 now, live. So if anybody wants to get on, we'll see. Maybe we can have a little bit of discussion. Like I said, I hope somebody will ask questions. So I'm going to talk here a little bit about my I wore this the other night, and I thought that's a really cool insignia. That's an icon. That was the icon that I came up with for the business that I started with my partner and former partner, former friend, former associate, former whatever. Like I used to be married once upon a time in the distant past, 10 years ago now. Um, and that's two tuning elements butted together, indicating that from the Earth pulses at certain frequencies, and the human body is designed, created to pulse at that same frequency. Oddly enough, because it's in sync with the Earth. 7.83 hertz, 7.83 cycles per second, and that's what this indicates. If you're connected to the Earth, you're going to be healthier. You're going to have less pain. You're going to have less stresses in your life. So after 5 years of partnership, he dumped me. Like after 38 years of partnership with my ex-wife, she dumped me. So we all receive in life, or maybe in the next life, what we do in this life as retribution. And I believe some people are receiving it in this, going to receive it in this life. I'm not going to make any. I've seen it in action right now, I believe. I've talked about Caitlin Clark before, and there's all kinds of people that hate her. I mean, a lot of black people hate her, a lot of some white people hate her, but I've seen that what happens is a lot of people hate on her, and their life goes to shit. They get fired from their job, they lose their position in life, they get fired from their team, they get dumped, they get traded, cashiered out, blackballed out of the league in one case. Fact. Quite a few media personnel have lost their positions. A guy named Greg Davis hit on her, said some nasty things about her. Let's run across another one today, which is the University of Iowa. He said some things that were stupid, and he got fired immediately. Natalie Esquire, when the guy was stalking Caitlin, she said she should go public with this. She got fired from her job with NBC or CBN or whatever it was, CBS, I don't know. She got dumped almost immediately. Cheryl Swoops is not doing herself any good. Kennedy Carter gave her a shoulder check, knocked her to the floor. She's blackballed from the league now. So some things are happening in real life that are affecting people's lives, and the people that are blessing her are doing good. People that are making comments about her, like Kelsey Mitchell said, Caitlin is changing the world. Another player, Satu Sabali, said, Caitlin is her own economy, and that's very true. She doesn't need Nike as much as Nike needs her. And Nike's not going to do themselves any favor by screwing her over and cheating her. So anyway, just things happen in life. Sometimes in the next world you get paid for what you did in this life, but anyway, enough said. I woke up the other day thinking about that, about Caitlin Clark. A whole lot of people are nasty to her, and their lives are in the toilet now. On the other hand, a lot of people have spoken good of her, and they're doing fine. And then the words bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee came to mind. And when I wake up, I always do a screenshot on my phone, so I know what time it is. 12:03. I want to look up Genesis 12:3, or Exodus 12:3, or Leviticus 12:3, but I like to do it sometimes. I'll see this number that just strikes me, and I'll look up that chapter and verse. So I looked up Genesis 12:3. Guess what Genesis 12:3 says? I'll bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee. Oddly enough, the words were in my head. Very interesting. So, okay, that's all I'm going to say. So chapter 15, last paragraph of chapter 14. So they're on their way up to, you're not going to be able to watch that one. Okay, sorry about that one. So they're trying to get up to the diggings to get out into the overworld. So they're at the end of the road. The light ahead of them goes out. The lamp behind them goes out. They're in pitch darkness. And then they see a light up, a faint blue light coming through the wall of where they're heading to. So they're in a tunnel that's been, the ceiling's getting lower. They had to dismount. So they're walking on foot with leading the horses. And the light goes in front of them, goes out, and the light behind them goes out there in pitch darkness. And then they see a little opening with a glow of light. That's what they see. So I'll just read a little bit of that to get you on track here. Let me get a drink of water. You understand, I just got to finish reading a chapter, and you know how my voice is. At last the roof was so low that Puddleglum and the prince knocked their heads against it. The party dismounted and led the horses. The road was uneven here, and one had to pick one step with some care. That was how Jill noticed the growing darkness. There was no doubt about it now. The faces of the others looked strange and ghastly in the green glow. Then all at once she couldn't help it. Jill gave a little scream. One light, the next one ahead, went out altogether. The one behind them did the same. Then they were in absolute darkness. Courage, friends, came Prince Aurelian's voice. Whether we live or die, Aslan will be our good lord. That's right, sir, said Puddleglum's voice, and you must always remember there's one good thing about being trapped down here. It'll save funeral expenses. Jill held her tongue. If you don't want other people to know how frightened you are, this is always a wise thing to do, because your voice gives you away. We might as well go on and stand here, said Eustace, and when she heard the tremble in his voice, Jill knew how wise she'd been not to trust her own. Puddleglum and Eustace went first with their arms stretched out in front of them for fear of blundering into anything. Jill and the prince followed, leading the horses. I say, came Eustace's voice much later, are my eyes going queer, or is there a patch of light up there? Before anyone could answer him, Puddleglum called out, Stop, I'm against a dead end, and it's earth, not rock. What are you saying, Scrub? By the lion, said the prince. Eustace is right. There's a sort of, but it's not daylight, said Jill. It's only a cold blue sort of light. Better than nothing, though, said Eustace. Can we get up to it? It's not right overhead, said Puddleglum. It's above us, but it's in this wall that I run into. How would it be, Pole, if you got up on my shoulders and saw whether you could get up to it? Okay, chapter 15. Anybody on? One. Hello. Say hi. And tell me where you're from, or if I know who you are, just say hi. Patch of light did not show up against anything. The disappearance of Jill, chapter 15, sorry. The patch of light did not show up anything down in the darkness where they were standing. The others could only hear, not see, Jill's efforts to get on the Marshwiggle's back. That is, they heard him saying, You needn't put your finger in my eye, and nor your foot in my mouth, either, and that's more like it, and said, I'll hold on to your legs, that'll leave your arms free to steady yourself against the earth. Then they looked up, and soon they saw the black shape of Jill's head against the patch of light. Well, they all shouted up anxiously. It's a hole, called Jill's voice. I could get through it if I was a little bit higher. What do you see through it? Asked Eustace. Nothing much yet, said Jill. I say, Puddleglum, let me get my legs. Let go of my legs so I can stand on your shoulders instead of sitting on them. I can steady myself all right against the edge. They could hear her moving, and then much more of her came into sight against the grayness of the opening. In fact, all of her down to the waist. I say, began Jill, but suddenly broke off with a cry, not a sharp cry. It sounded more as if her mouth had been muffled up, or something had been pushed into it. After that she found her voice and seemed to be shouting out as loud as she could, but they couldn't hear the words. Two things then happened at the same moment. The patch of light was completely blocked up for a second or two, and they heard both a scuffling, struggling sound and the voice of the Marshwiggle gasping, Quick, help! Hold on to her legs, someone's pulling her. There, no, here, too late. The opening and the cold light which filled it were now perfectly clear again. Jill had vanished. Jill, Jill, they shouted frantically, but there was no answer. Why the dickens couldn't you have held on to her feet, said Eustace. I don't know, Scrub, groaned Puddleglum. Born to be a misfit, I shouldn't wonder. Fated to be Pole's death, just as I was fated to eat talking stag at Harfang. Not that it isn't my own fault as well. This is the greatest shame and sorrow that I could have fallen on us, said the prince. We have sent a brave lady into the hands of enemies and stayed behind in safety. Don't paint it too black, sir, said Puddleglum. We're not very safe except for death by starvation in this hole. I wonder, am I small enough to get through there where Jill did, said Eustace. What had really happened to Jill was this. As soon as she got her head out of the hole, she found that she was looking down as if from an upstairs window, not up as through a trap door. She had been so long in the dark that her eyes couldn't at first take in what they were seeing, except that she was not looking at the daylight sunny world which she so wanted to see. The air seemed to be deadly cold, and the light was pale and blue. There was also a good deal of noise going on, and a lot of white objects flying around in the air. It was at that moment that she had shouted down to Puddleglum to let her stand up on his shoulders. When she had done this, she could see and hear a good deal better. The noises she had been hearing turned out to be of two kinds: the rhythmical thumping of several feet and the music of 4 fiddles, 3 flutes, and a drum. She also got her position clear. She was looking out of a hole in a steep bank, a hillside, which sloped downwards and reached the level about 14 feet below her. Everything was very white. A lot of people were moving about. Then she gasped. The people were little fauns and dryads with leaf-crowned hair floating behind them. For a second, they looked as if they were moving anyhow. Then she saw that they really were doing a dance with so many complicated steps and figures that it took you some time to understand it. Then it came over her like a thunderclap that the pale blue light was really moonlight, and the white stuff on the ground was really snow. And of course, there were the stars, staring at a black frosty sky overhead, and the tall black things behind the dancers were trees. They'd only got out into the upper world at last. They had not only got out into the upper world at last, but they had come out in the heart of Narnia. Jill felt she could have fainted with delight, and the wild music, intensely sweet, and yet just the least bit eerie too, and full of good magic, as the witches' thrumming had been full of bad magic, made her feel it all the more. All this takes time to tell, but of course it took a very short time to see. Jill turned almost at once to shout down to the others, "I say, it's all right. We're out and we're home." But the reason she never got further than "I say" was this. Circling round and around the dancers was a ring of dwarfs, all dressed in their finest clothes, mostly scarlet, with fur-lined hoods and golden tassels and big furry top boots. As they circled around, they were all diligently throwing snowballs. Those were the white things that Jill had seen flying through the air. They weren't throwing them at the dancers as silly boys might have been doing in England. They were throwing them through the dance in such perfect time, with the music and with such perfect aim, that if all the dancers were in exactly the right places at exactly the right moments, no one would ever be hit. This is called the Great Snow Dance, and it is done every year in Narnia on the first moonlit night when there is snow on the ground. Of course, it is a kind of game as well as a dance, because every now and then some dancer will be the least bit wrong and get a snowball in the face, and everyone laughs. But a good team of dancers, dwarves, and musicians will keep it up for hours without a single hit. On fine nights when the cold and the drum taps and the hooting of the owls and the moonlight have gotten into their wild woodland blood and made it even wilder, they will dance till daybreak. I wish you could see it for yourselves. What had stopped Jill when she got as far as "I say" was, of course, a simply fine big snowball that came sailing through the dance from a dwarf on the far side and got her fair and square in the mouth. She did not in the least mind. 20 snowballs would not have damped her spirits at that moment. But however happy you are feeling, you can't talk with your mouth full of snow. And when, after considerable sputting, she could speak again, she quite forgot in her excitement that the others down in the dark behind her still didn't know the good news. She simply leaned out as far out of the hole as she could and yelled to the dancers, "Help! Help! We're buried in the hill. Come and dig us out." The Narnians, who had not even noticed the little hole in the hillside, were of course very surprised and looked about in several wrong directions before they found out where the voice was coming from. But when they caught sight of Jill, they all came running toward her, and as many as could scrambled up the bank, and a dozen or more hands were stretched up to help her. And Jill caught hold of them and thus got out of the hole and came slithering down the slope, the bank head first, and then picked herself up and said, "Oh, do go and dig the others out. There are 3 others besides the horses, and one of them is Prince Rilian." She was already in the middle of a crowd when she said this, for besides the dancers, all sorts of people who had been watching the dance and with whom she had not seen at first came running up. Squirrels came out of the trees in showers, and so did owls. Hedgehogs came waddling as fast as their short legs could carry them. Bears and badgers followed at a slower pace. A great panther, twitching its tail in excitement, was the last to join the party. But as soon as they understood what Jill was saying, they all became active. "Pick a shovel, boys, pick a shovel. Off for tools," said the dwarves, and dashed away into the woods with top speed. "Wake up some moles. They're good chaps for digging. They're quite as good as dwarves," said a voice. What was that she said about Prince Aurelian?" said another. "Hush," said the panther. "The poor child's crazed, and no wonder after being lost inside the hill. She doesn't know what she's saying." "That's right," said the old bear. "Why, she said Prince Aurelian was a horse." "No, she didn't," said a squirrel. "Very pert." "Yes, she did," said another squirrel, even perter. "It's quite true. Don't be so silly," said Jill. She spoke like that because her teeth were now chattering with the cold. I'll say pause. What's going on? Time's running. Anybody on? Huh. Hey, Gad. One anyway. I'm gonna redo 11. One where the voice went out. Not tonight, that's for sure. Okay. "It's quite true. Don't be so silly," said Jill. She spoke like that because her teeth were now chattering with the cold. Immediately, one of the dryads flung around her a furry cloak which some dwarf had dropped when he rushed to fetch his mining tools, and an obliging fawn trotted off among the trees to a place where Jill could see firelight in the mouth of a cave to get her a hot drink. But before it came, all the dwarves reappeared with spades and pickaxes and charged into the hillside. Then Jill heard cries of, "Hi, what are you doing? Put that sword down. Now, not young, none of that," said, "and he's a vicious one, now ain't he?" Jill hurried to the spot and didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw Eustace's face, very pale and dirty, projecting from the blackness of the hole, and Eustace's right hand brandishing a sword which he made lunges at anyone who came near him. For of course Eustace had been having a very different time from Jill during the last few minutes. He had heard Jill cry out and seen her disappear into the unknown. Like the prince and Puddleglum, he thought that some enemies had caught her, and from down below he didn't see that the pale bluish light was moonlight. He thought the hole would lead only to some other cave lit by some ghostly phosphorescence and filled with goodness so what evil creatures of the underworld, some new enemy. So when he had persuaded Puddleglum to give him a back and drawn his sword, he poked his head out and had really been doing a very brave thing. The others would have done it first if they could, but the hole was too small for them to climb through. Eustace was a little bit bigger and a lot clumsier than Jill, and so that when he looked out, he bumped his head against the top of the hole and brought a small avalanche of snow down in his face. And so when he could see again, he saw dozens of figures coming at him as hard as they could run. It is not surprising that he tried to ward them off. "Stop, Eustace, stop," Jill cried. "We're all good friends. Can't you see we've come up in Narnia? Everything's all right." Then Eustace did see, and he apologized to the dwarfs, and the dwarfs said not to mention it. And dozens of thick, hairy, dwarfish hands helped him out, just as they had helped Jill out a few minutes before. Then Jill scrambled up the bank and put her head in the dark opening and shouted the good news into the prisoners. As she turned away, she heard Puddleglum mutter, "Ah, poor Pole, it's been too much for her. This last bit turned her head. I shouldn't wonder. She's beginning to see things." Jill rejoined Eustace, and they shook one another by both hands and took in great deep breaths of the fresh midnight air. And a warm cloak was brought for Eustace and hot drinks for both of them. While they were sipping it, the dwarves had already got all the snow and all the sods off a large strip of the hillside around the original hole, and the pickaxes and spades were now going as merrily as the feet of fauns and dryads had been going in a distant dance 10 minutes before. Only 10 minutes, yet already it felt to Jill and Eustace as if the dangers in the dark and heat and general smotheriness of the earth must have been only a dream. Out here in the cold, with the moon and the huge stars overhead, Narnian stars are nearer than stars in our world. Yeah. That's a funny one, isn't it? Our stars are nearer than we're told. And with kind, merry faces all around them, one couldn't quite believe in Underland. Before they had finished their hot drinks, a dozen or so moles, newly woken up and still very sleepy and not very well pleased, had arrived. But as soon as they understood what it was all about, they joined in with the will. Even the fawns made themselves useful by carting away the earth in little wheelbarrows, and the squirrels danced and leaped to and fro in great excitement. Though Jill never found exactly what they thought they were doing. The bears and owls contented themselves with giving advice, and kept on asking the children if they wouldn't like to come into the cave That was where Jill had seen the firelight and get warm and have supper, but the children couldn't bear to go without seeing their friends set free. No one in our world can work out a job of that sort of digging, as dwarves and talking moles work in Narnia. But then, of course, moles and dwarves don't look at it as work. They like digging. It was therefore not really long before they had opened a great black chasm in the hillside, and out from that blackness into the moonlight, this would have been rather dreadful if one hadn't known who they were, came first the long, leggy, steeple-hatted figure of the Marshwiggle, and then leading two great horses, really and the prince himself. As Puddleglum appeared, shouts broke out on every side. Why, it's a Wiggle! Why, it's old Puddleglum from the eastern marshes. Whatever have you been doing, Puddleglum? There have been search parties out for you. The Lord Trumpkin has been putting up notices, and there's a reward offered. But all this died away all in one moment as dead silence as quickly as the noise died away in a rowdy dormitory. The headmaster opens up the door, for now they saw the prince. No one doubted for a moment who he was. There were plenty of beasts and dryads and dwarves and fauns that remembered him from the days before his enchanting. There were some old ones who could just remember how his father, King Caspian, had looked when he was a young man, and saw their likeness. But I think they would have known him anyway. Pale though he was from long imprisonment in the deep lands, dressed in black, dusty, disheveled, and weary, there was something in his face and air which no one could mistake. That look is in the face of all true kings of Narnia, who rule by the will of Aslan and sit at Cair Paravel on the throne of Peter the High King. Instantly every head was bared and every knee was bent, and a moment later such cheering and shouting, such jumps and reels of joy, and such handshaking and kissings and embracings of everybody by everybody else broke out that the tears came into Jill's eyes. Their quest had been worth all the pains it cost. Please it, your highness, said the oldest of the dwarfs, there is some attempt at supper in the cave yonder, prepared against the ending of the snow dance. With a good will, said father, said the prince, for never had any prince, knight, gentleman, or bearer so good a stomach to his victuals as we four wanderers have tonight. The whole crowd began to move away through the trees toward the cave. Jill heard Puddleglum saying to those who pressed around him, No, my story can wait. Nothing worth talking about has happened to me. I want to hear the news. Don't try breaking it to me gently, for I'd rather have it all at once. Has the king been shipwrecked? Any forest fires? No wars on the Calormen border? Or a few dragons, I shouldn't wonder. All the creatures laughed out loud and said, Isn't that just like a Marshwiggle? The two children were nearly dropping with tiredness and hunger. But the warmth of the cave and the very sight of it, and the firelight dancing on the walls, and dressers and cups and saucers and plates on the smooth stone floor, just as it does in a farmhouse kitchen, revived them a little. All the same, they were fast asleep while supper was being got ready. While they slept, Prince Aurelian was talking over the whole adventure with the older and wiser beasts and dwarfs, and now they all saw what it meant. How a wicked witch, doubtless the same kind as that white witch who had brought the great winter on Narnia a long time ago, had contrived the whole thing, first killing Aurelian's mother and enchanting Aurelian himself. And they saw how she had dug right under Narnia and was going to break out and rule it through Aurelian, how he had never dreamed that the country of which she would make him king in name, but really her slave, was his own country. And from the children's part of the story, they saw how she was in league and friendship with dangerous giants of Harfang. And the lesson of it all is, your highness, said the oldest dwarf, that those northern witches always mean the same thing, but in every age they have a different plan for getting it. Chapter 16, one more chapter. Wow. I'll do that tomorrow. Okay. Tomorrow, maybe I'll do live 2 again. Only one. Hey, Gad, how you doing? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to finish it tomorrow. I'll do it live. Probably about 8. It's a good time, I think. Unless you say it's better for you. 11 was about. I'm going to redo 11. I uploaded 12, 13, 14. They're uploaded. This is 15. So that next chapter is 16 is the end of one. So I was kind of figuring I could probably end it about Sunday. So I'll end it Monday. All right. God bless everybody. Yeah. Like I said, I'm hoping this for my grandchildren, you know. Maybe some of my grandchildren will be able to hear it someday. All right. Well, pasta lasagna. Hasta la vista, baby. Mañana. Jim. There you are. I just finished, so I'm sorry. But we're up to 15. I'm going to read tomorrow night live about 8 o'clock. Or is that a better time for you? Is there a better time for you, Jim? Would earlier or later be better? Let me, before we get off here, let me know that. Where are the hearts coming from? Gideon bless. I'd say you're praying about God bless. Jim, let me know if there's any time better. So, anyway, I'm going to read tomorrow night live, 8, 9 o'clock maybe. All right. Unless somebody says it differently, you know, text me, put a comment on one of the videos, and I'll probably see it. So, all right. Yeah, would it be a little bit later be better for you? Okay. All right, Jim. All right. Okay. Well, God bless. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Hope you've enjoyed it, got something out of it. So, all right. Good night.